The top story on India Global today is, well, is the Trump-Putin bonhomie on thin ice? That's the question we're going to ask on the show today. Why? Because US President Donald Trump's recent comments do seem to indicate just that. With the US President saying that he is quote-unquote very angry and even pissed off. I'm not saying this. This is what the US President is saying. With his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, weeks after attempting to negotiate some sort of a negotiated settlement or a ceasefire in Ukraine. Donald Trump, in an interview with NBC Network, said, and in fact came down heavily on Putin for attacking Ukrainian President Zelensky's credibility, threatened to impose a 50% tariff on countries that are buying Russian oil if he does not agree to a ceasefire, which could significantly impact India because we are one of the largest oil importers in the world. Remember, these fresh tariff threats come over and above on top of the 25% because of the Venezuelan oil tariffs that have been put in place. So this is the second layer of tariffs that Donald Trump is talking about. Where does this leave A, the Russia-Ukraine settlement talks, the ceasefire talks, and B, where does this leave a country like India, which needs to import 85% of its energy needs, is the question that I will now put forth to our panelists. But first up on your screens are the big questions as always. Question one that we ask is that, well, will Trump actually impose those sanctions on Russia? Will this upend the peace talks that have been going on for some time, given the fact that this could really derail the entire process? The second question we ask is that what is the kind of brunt that India will face? Will it actually face the brunt of oil sanctions, or could there be some loopholes, some exceptions that Donald Trump could create for India? And the third thing, will Russia-US relationship really take a hit after this? Because, you know, this is really going 2 steps backward, and between the leaders, there could be some bad blood impacting the global oil supply chain. All right, let's now get in Professor Anuradha Chenoy, who's an international affairs expert, former dean at the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies, SIS, from JNU, and Mr. Ajay Bagga to really explain to us the trade side of it, the market side of it. What is the kind of impact that countries like India could face since we'll have to import so much more expensive oil? But first up, Dr. Chenoy, let me start with you. The fact is, this really is Trump's economic statecraft 2.0, isn't it? You try and find out some sort of a possible deal. If there's no deal on the table, there are tariffs that are coming in full throttle, isn't it?
Absolutely. What Trump does, he is weaponizing international trade. If he doesn't get his way, if he doesn't strike a deal, then he hits out hard and pushes, and that's what he's done. Earlier, the US had weaponized the dollar, and you saw the consequence. Countries started, trading with each other in local currencies, and they didn't like that even further. Now he's weaponizing trade through tariffs, that anyone who doesn't listen to what he wants is, the tariffs imposed. So he's not doing sanctions right now, but he's doing tariffs. So, of course, the talks are on. He's, firstly, the US was party to the conflict. This is their proxy war. Now, suddenly he's shifted the narrative where he is mediator, but he's also party to the conflict. And in this case, the fact is that Zelensky, his term as president finished several months ago, but he's imposed martial law. So Putin is saying that what credibility does a president whose term as president, according to the Ukrainian constitution, is over? So who do I sign this deal with when he is actually not the president? But Trump wants this deal through for, several reasons. We're not going into that at the moment. So he's saying that either President Putin agrees to all of Trump's term, or he will impose sanctions on third countries, because there are already so many sanctions on Russia, and Russia has been able to bypass them. So he's saying now I will impose what is called the CAATSA
sanctions on whoever buys Russian oil.
Whoever buys, which means
let me put that
India,
to Mr. Bagga,
China, as you said.
Let me put that to Mr. Bagga, which is that Russia is one of the top 3 oil-producing countries in the world. India imports about 85% of our oil needs. We now have about 1/3 of our oil needs coming in from Russia. these additional sanctions, how much will they impact a country like India?
Gaurie, we have to see how much these sanctions will really translate into actual action, or is it posturing? Most of this is posturing. Trump has driven himself into a position where before the elections, he said, I'll resolve Ukraine in one day. Then he came very heavily on the Ukrainian president. He came down very heavily on him. And now Putin is stalling. It's a classic negotiation tactic by Putin. He's putting in various objections because he's grabbing more and more land. They've grabbed
No,
back
but any back of
what
the
he-
envelope calculations, Mr. Bagga, that you could help us understand the kind of impact that we need to brace us for. There is the politics and the posturing of it, but the actual impact, economic impact of this.
There are three ways an impact can come on us. One, the Russian discount has gone down very steeply. 2023, they were giving as much as a 30% discount. Now it's down to 8% to the Dubai crude levels. So we are not making much discounts from the Russian supplies. But the bigger issue is what you said earlier, that Russia is the third biggest producer, and if 11 million barrels go out per day, there is no substitute right now available. The Saudis can produce maybe 3-4 more million barrels, but more than that, there
Prices
is
will
very little
hit
capacity.
sky-high levels, and it will have a cascading impact on all economies around the world. Professor Anuradha, let me ask you this then. As things stand right now, we spoke about, some amount of posturing here, some amount of economic statecraft of Trump really at play here. But talk to us about what do you think or anticipate could be the next moves here, because both parties, both presidents are really trying to extract the best possible deal they can.
I think there are several things which Putin wanted, which the American side has agreed to, and that is they've agreed that Ukraine will not be part of NATO. They've agreed that the 4 provinces and Crimea will remain with Russia. They have more or less agreed, and they have said that they will, maybe not even they will give some kind of security for the Russians. So I think this will be back and forth, and Mr. Putin is also keen on talks. He does have several cards in his hand because Russia is winning this war. They have gained a lot of territory, and as their foreign minister said, they're this close from actually getting what they want. They don't want more in West Ukraine. What they wanted were the Russian-speaking provinces and Crimea, and they've got that. And I think if the US agrees to that, the deal will be done. But we must remember that Zelensky and the Europeans do not really want this peace. So that's another roadblock which Mr. Trump will have to handle. So there's more in concert with what Putin and Trump are saying as opposed to what Europe and Zelensky are saying. They are more hesitant about the peace because they're not sure about these terms, and they have a terrific amount of Russophobia.
Given the kind of borderline disdain that Trump administration seems to have for Europe, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be much of an impediment if the other two parties are on table. I'm afraid I'm completely out of time. I have to leave it there. Thanks much, both of you, for joining me today on this edition of India Global.